Welcome to the Divine Play Podcast. My name is Mirilena Lee. As always, I'm here with
Shannon Morrison.
and this is your practical guide to living with joy. Today we are going to be talking about the B word.
The
And this is
boundary word. There's
the
so many B
boundary
words.
word. Yes. And this feels like a very difficult word for a lot of
Uh-huh.
people. It was for me for many, many years. And I know it was for you as well.
hmm
And so I think we should just dive right in and talk a little bit about what happens and whose responsibility it is when boundary issues come up. So, Shannon, whose responsibility is it? Whose responsibility are our boundaries?
Our boundaries, if you're like pointing to myself, if you cannot see us, you're on podcast listening. It is our own responsibility. We are responsible to creating and holding true to our own personal boundaries, which is simply kind of like our values, right? Um, and
Yeah.
it makes a huge difference. But this has come up
Yeah.
for you recently. And I was like, I love this conversation because we get to trust ourselves and be confident and courageous enough to express what our boundaries are for other people.
Yeah, this has come up for me in two different ways. I was responding to a post that I saw on Reddit, and it was somebody who was in a situation where somebody was saying something that was bothering her, and she wanted her
Mm,
to stop saying it. And my advice to them was to say, hey, like, my baggage is up, and I know that you don't mean anything by this, but I'm definitely having some baggage around it for me, and it's a trigger, and I'd really appreciate it if you would stop saying this
mhm,
thing. And what was being said was that her baby was much better looking than her friend. So the woman would be looking at pictures of her baby and be like, "Ooh, somebody looks better than than the other person, and it's definitely her," right? And this woman was like, she just keeps saying that her baby is better looking than me, and it's triggering me. And what was really interesting on Reddit is that my suggestion that she own that this is her baggage and
mhm.
that she knows her friend doesn't mean anything by it was met with incredible vitriol. Like
Oh, I
it,
bet. There's
oh,
so much
oh,
emotions around this. I can imagine the backlash. Oh my gosh.
the
I
backlash
mean,
was insane that I suggested that she say this is rooted in my own baggage and I need to set a boundary. So that's the first way that it's come up. And I want to
mhm,
talk about this resistance to our triggers being our responsibility because I think it's
mm,
very parallel to our boundaries being our responsibility. And then the
absolutely.
other way that it's come up for me is that last week I had an experience where I didn't use my voice and a boundary of mine was violated. And it's been a really interesting healing process for me in the past couple of days because I did experience harm. And I do not hold the other person responsible in any way, shape, or form
hmm
because I didn't use my voice. If I had clearly communicated my boundary, it would have been respected. And I know that without a doubt. However, I did not communicate my boundary because I was people pleasing and because I went into a freeze response. And
hmm
so that person,
Mm.
even though harm happened, but that person's not responsible, which also is not the normal way that our culture and society wants
Mhm.
us to treat this situation. Like, if I got hurt, then it must be their fault, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. I think that so many in this leadership absolutely in leadership we talk about it's literally if and I have even brought it up to my kid like if you are literally having the worst day ever and everybody is being a B and not the boundary word. Sometimes like we get to look at ourselves and be like, how did I show up? How did I speak? How did I express what my true boundaries are? What do I want? What do I don't want? Like you're not going to go into a salon like this I think I brought this up with you last night is you're not
Mhm.
going to go into a salon and go in and get your eyebrows waxed and go in and be like, oh, we're painting your toes and like go do it
Mhm.
because they said so, right? I know it's like completely off the wall, but it's the same thing. We get to express what we want, pay for what we want, and choose what we want. And if we do not say anything, then it is absolutely people pleasing and no one wins.
I want to kind of get your take on the Reddit
Mhm.
experience where the entire internet came for me because I implied that it was helpful to say this is rooted in my baggage and I need to set a
Mhm.
boundary. And the idea that we should take ownership for our
Mhm.
triggers and what we're having an emotional responsibility to created a lot of anger. And so, what is
Absolutely.
your take on that? Why do you think so many people are resistant to the
Oh.
idea that I'm upset because of my baggage, even though it was triggered by what somebody else did? So, even if somebody else did something where
Mhm.
it might feel like you're being insulted, or maybe they are, doing something that feels like it's causing harm.
Mhm.
Why are people so angry? Why do you think people get angry about the idea that I should own that? I should own that, hey, I'm being triggered right now and it's rooted in my baggage and I would like to set a boundary around it. Why is it not okay to say this is rooted in my baggage?
I don't know. It's absolutely it's what it's rooted from. I don't want to say everyone because that's not necessarily where I want to go with this, but in my experience, it is not always been easy to own my own emotions. It's not always been easy to be like, "Oh, I am 50-50 in this," or "I'm 100% responsible for how I chose to speak, do, or act today." In so many times in the last, even I mean the last 10 years, but especially in the last 3 years, after going through so many self-development and leadership and programs and coaching, is I'm 100% responsible for everything that I choose to do or say. And
And
I
how I
think it's
feel.
really, yeah, and how I feel. And if I feel a certain way, then I get to be like, well, where'd that come from? Like, where
Mhm.
inside is being tested, triggered, or lifted up to create this emotional response. If we're responding some way, then only the person that can control it is you. No one can make you feel a certain way. So if you
Uh-huh.
feel a certain way and you get attacked and triggered and be like, oh my gosh, and you get sweaty palms and your heart's racing, girlfriend, it's like inside you. So, like, where inside me is this showing up? So, what happened in my past? Who told me this before that upset me or maybe made me feel less than before, and it's coming up right now, and I'm going back to when I was 9 or 13 or 15 when my first boyfriend was like, you look like a slut in those pants, like whatever, you know what I mean? It comes up, we get emotionally attached to certain statements or smells or the way somebody shows up, and we revert back to a response from before, and we're
So
coming in not healed space. Yeah.
So I think that you hit the nail on the head. People don't want to take responsibility for the fact that what they're feeling is because of them.
Hmm.
So it like in this particular case, somebody saying their baby is much cuter than me and much better looking than me, I might think that's completely innocuous. There
Hmm.
might be 50,000 people out there who think this is just harmless and she thinks she's making a cute joke. Now,
Mhm,
if it bothers me, I really struggled with wanting to make other people responsible for how I felt and
mhm,
whether or not I was upset. And when it comes to setting a boundary, I think it's really important to remember that other people's intentions are completely and totally irrelevant to my boundaries. So, like, my friend saying that their baby is cuter than me, 100%. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that they don't intend to hurt me with what it
mhm,
is that they're saying or doing. Now, if somebody is doing something malicious and
mhm,
obviously harmful with the intent to harm me, that's a different boundary conversation. You
mhm.
know,
Yeah.
that's very different. But if it's somebody in my life and I'm like, man, they're saying something that I'm feeling really triggered by, my knee-jerk reaction now is not
Mhm,
to immediately assume that they have the intention to harm me or insult me. Now, 15 years ago, I
mhm.
would automatically assume that their intention was to harm me or to
Yep,
insult.
yep,
And that is a really rough place to be in because when I go out into the world, just automatically assuming that everything I'm triggered by is a personal attack on me and that it's on
yeah,
purpose, I respond in a very different way.
Oh my
And
gosh, yeah.
give people the benefit of the doubt, and I realize that their intentions and my boundaries are two separate things,
Mhm,
I can come at my boundaries from a place of, hey, I have a boundary here. I didn't even know it was there. You probably didn't know it was there. And hey, can we work together so that we can continue to
mhm,
have a great relationship? And that
mhm.
tends to be received a lot better. And so for
Absolutely.
me, that's why I'm like, hey, like own your baggage. Like, hey,
Mhm,
my baggage is up. I'm feeling really triggered by this thing. Can we talk about it? And like, maybe
mhm.
I need to have a boundary. I'd like to have a boundary. That gets received so much better than, hey, you are such an asshole. How dare you say this thing? Don't you know that
Absolutely.
that's rude as
Because that's
fuck?
gonna
Like,
sever all the relationships, right? I feel like it's almost like a car that is like you're trying to get it in first and it's not, and it's start and stop and start and stop and start and stop. Or it's like a coaster where it's just an ebb and flow. I feel like if we have good boundaries and we're working on our inner child, let's just put it out there. If we're in our inner self and we're like healthily communicating to all those around us, then those boundaries are an ebb and flow of being created by both, and like whoever you're speaking to and you're mirroring the same thing. It's like this ebb and flow of you and I are on the camera, we're back here. It's like the focus is moving back and forth, and it's an ease and a flow. And if you're going across a cornfield the wrong way, that's going to suck. It's like you're triggered constantly. It's like there's constantly red lights in a corn. I mean, it's just like it's this red light, red light, red light, red light, and there's like we're stopping immediately, knee jerk reaction. And that's how it would feel like all day long. That would suck. It'd be like New York rush
so
hour and stoplights everywhere.
I want you to tell me more about something that you have been saying over and over again. But before we do that, I want to ask our listeners, how many of you guys feel like other people are responsible for how you feel? Tell us in the comments. Do you feel like your triggers are your responsibility or somebody else's responsibility? I would really love to know what people's reaction
Absolutely.
to that whole concept is, because it's a really big conversation and it's
It
fantastic
is.
food for thought. What I want to come back to, especially when it comes to our boundaries and needing to have them, getting to have them, and our experience of being in a relationship with other people, is you've said this several times that it's a co-creation. Tell me
Mhm.
more about that.
Doing that. So one thing that I have done as of late, because I am an emotional human, I don't know if you all resonate with this, or if you've experienced Shannon, because I am super emotional and passionate when I get kind of excited. And my husband, now husband, is amazing. And what we do in this relationship is I get to frame it. Like I like to open up and I might just be like, gas hose all of this information that's in my brain because it's constantly like there's stuff going on all the time. And one thing that we do together is, do you need feedback? Do you want a hug? Or am I just here as a listening board? Because like I need to know if I should be like thinking about a solution, or if you just need like a moment to like let these emotions get off your chest and everything's fine, and we're normally like walking or whatever. And so I think that in relationships that gets to be we get to be grounded with our boundaries. What we need in the moment of any conversation, what we need in a project. But if you're going to have a relationship with anybody, whether it's work, children, spouse, any kind of partnership, business partner, is what do you need right now? Like you can ask yourself, what do I need in this moment? Because like if I'm being triggered, what do I need? What do you need, sweetheart? Is an amazing conversation that another coach that I have always says. What do you need? If you're being triggered, what do you need right now? Like what do I need right now? And your partner, the other reciprocating person that you were in this relationship with, whatever relationship, can do the same thing. Like I feel like that is creating a really healthy boundary for everybody involved, in my
No,
experience, not side of it, but
I love this so much as a practical tool.
Mhm,
Before you have any difficult conversation, to really come to an understanding with yourself,
mhm,
take the time to sit and maybe even jot it down on paper and ground into, what do I need from this conversation that I'm about to have? Do I need to be heard? Do I need help problem solving? What is it that I need? And then also understanding that if I don't ask for what I need, then I am the problem.
Mhm.
because
Absolutely.
other people aren't mind readers, you know?
Mhm.
And we get to ask for what we need, and
Mhm.
if we can just take a little bit of time to sit down and get clear, get grounded, and get clear about what it is we need in the moment before we
Absolutely.
step into a difficult conversation. And just really understanding that if we don't ask for what we need and we don't communicate our clear boundaries, that we are co creating a situation. And if the problem continues, we are the problem.
We are.
And so boundaries very often does get to be a dirty word. And
Mhm.
we get to ask for what we need. And it's wonderful because if I'm the problem, I'm also the solution.
Also the solution. Something just came into mind because this was a job thing. And I was like, her values are her family. And this job is going to take so much time Monday through Sunday. It doesn't stop at 5 p.m. And so I'm like, her values are so important. She gets to say these out loud. Like, I'm at every one of my kids' games. School things are super important to me. My family is super important to me. Like, this is going to be number one. And my job is going to be number two. I absolutely will support everything here. But if that doesn't work for you, I'm not your woman. That is also a huge healthy boundary. Like when you go into your interview and you're working on a corporate or whatever. Like if you go in, I will work my ass off. I am excellent people skills. I have all these amazing, whatever your resume, right? And minimum, this is what I get paid. And I'm a mama. Like where it is okay because if that job is a no, that's absolutely okay. That is the next step to the next one that's going to be the best fit for you. And so going in, I think every conversation that we get to have, that's nerve wracking. Like going in for an interview and you want this job and you're like, oh my gosh, this is my life and this is me really great. And you get to create a both and that's how you create a good boundary. Like that's how you create that co-creation with everything. Because if you express yourself so sincerely and so clearly, it's going to come back to you. And that
Well,
roller coaster of ebb and flow is going to be created.
and I love this a lot too, because and we'll wrap up on this point.
Mhm,
I think not only do we get to walk into our conversations with, hey, this is where I'm at, this is what does work for me, and this is what doesn't work for me.
mhm,
And I would like to move forward in this way. My boundary
mhm,
is I need you to stop saying this, or I need you to do this thing for me to stay in relationship, or I need this commitment that I won't have to work weekends if I take this job. And the consequence, that's a real key part of boundaries. You have to give a
mhm,
consequence, a clear one.
mhm,
And the consequence of this thing not happening is that it will be the end of the relationship, or the relationship will change, or we'll
mhm.
have a change in our dynamic, whatever that consequence is. But what I love so much that you just said is that it is okay to say, if my boundary does not work for you, and if my boundary is not aligned with your vision, it is okay for us to part ways, because
Absolutely.
then our boundary is a boundary and not an ultimatum. We're not trying to
Absolutely.
control the other person. And so, let's see if we can put a very quick summary on this one and put a cap on it and a bow and a cherry on top. Number one, remember that everything is a co creation,
It is.
right? Yeah. What's number two? What's your
Number
number
two
two?
is frame your conversation. What do you need? Do you need feedback? Do you need a hug? Or you just need a sounding board? Open it up with this is what I need right now in this conversation because the other person does not know unless it is created for them. And number
Yes.
three,
Number three, be clear, be crystal clear about what is working for you, what is not working for you, what you need to happen or not happen moving forward, and what the very clear consequence will be if this boundary is violated. And
yeah,
number four
it's the vision.
is
It
the
is
vision.
absolutely okay to say if this is not aligned with the vision that you have, I am open to walking away and it's absolutely perfectly okay with me. Like no hard feelings here because we had this amazing conversation and you shared yours and I shared mine. You're co-creating.
Yeah. And just remember, folks, if you don't speak up, if you don't ask for what you need, if you don't say no to what doesn't work for you and yes to what does, you are the problem. But
Mhm.
if you're the problem, you are also
You're
the
also
what?
the solution. The solution.
That's
I
right.
love
You
it.
are the solution. Take your power back by remembering these things. Let us know what you think of these practical tips and tools for living a life full of joy, because let me tell you, boundaries, they create joy.
They create
100%.
joy.
That's
All
right.
right. We'll see you next week, friends. Thank you so much for joining. We'll talk to you soon.